In my 8th month of pregnancy, I refused to give my parents $7. T-Bay. My mother pushed me into a fountain right at my sister's anniversary party. You won't believe what happened next. My name is Irina. I'm 31. I've never rushed to be the center of attention. I didn't look for drama. All I wanted was peace. Security for the future. My own nest. My husband Anton and I had settled in a suburb of Portland, Oregon, in a condo we bought for $93. $500, our biggest purchase. Anton works as a graphic designer, and I run an event planning business from home. We're not wealthy, but we're not struggling either. The main thing was that this condo represented our future, especially now that I was carrying our baby. 36th week. Anton, my quiet sanctuary. He holds me when I cry, listens when I can't find words. With him, I first learned what emotional security meant. Because growing up, such a concept didn't exist in my household. I was the eldest daughter in what seemed like a picture-perfect family. Mother Linda always dressed impeccably. Father Oliver, a meticulous CPA. And Lisa, my younger sister, 6 years my junior, the golden child. They tolerated me. They adored Lisa. I was background noise in their perfect portrait. When I got into college, no one celebrated. When I started my business, Mom asked why I couldn't just get a normal job. And when we announced the pregnancy, Linda just raised an eyebrow, as if it was expected but unremarkable. I learned to smile through it all. Pretended it didn't hurt when Lisa was called gifted while I seemed invisible. Deep down, I hoped that someday they would see me. That's why I didn't immediately throw away the invitation, though I should have. I stood in my kitchen, turning over the glossy envelope. Lisa's anniversary celebration at the Silver Oak Hotel. All the pomp and circumstance, a reminder of where I belong. On the sidelines, and yet, a voice inside whispered, "What if this time is different?" Anton saw the envelope. "Want to go? I think I should." "Then let's go. But if anything goes wrong, we leave." How could I know that the next time I'd see my family, I'd be bleeding by a decorative fountain while those who were supposed to protect me stood and watched? The party on the day of the event. I wore a flowing, comfortable maternity dress. As we got in the car, I felt a strong kick. "She's active today," I said quietly. Anton smiled. Maybe she sensed her mother was heading into hostile territory. When we pulled up to the hotel, I saw the full grandeur of the summer terrace, white fountain, string lights, guests in evening wear. At the check-in, the hostess barely looked up, handed us a card, table 47. Near the fountain, when we found our spot, it was clear we'd been hidden away. A table with a simple cloth, wilted flowers, view blocked on one side by a photo banner, the fountain on the other. Anton adjusted his chair. They deliberately put us in the back. "It's fine. I expected it." And then I saw them. Mom on the small stage in a champagne dress, Dud beside her, and center stage, my sister, radiant, intouchable, never once looking in my direction. In that moment, I realized nothing had changed. I wasn't a guest. I was a shadow. Anton noticed me tense up. "Water," I nodded. He kissed my hand. "Be right back." I watched him walk toward the buffet. Leaned back, hand on my belly. "We're okay." I whispered to my daughter, "Almost done here." But peace never lasts long when surrounded by people who think you're dirt under their fingernails. I heard the click of heels on stone before I looked up. My mother stood before me, tight smile and narrowed eyes. Dad flanked her, wearing his usual disapproving expression. "You look tired," she said coldly, eyeing my dress. "Couldn't you find something more appropriate?" I blinked. "I'm 8 months pregnant. This is what fits." Dad glanced past me as if already bored. "Well, tonight's important for Lisa. Everyone has to make sacrifices." I frowned at sacrifices. Suddenly, Mom stepped closer, her voice sharp and even. We went a bit over budget. Flowers, catering, last-minute venue changes. All this costs money. It would be right if you contributed. "Contributed," I repeated. Dad interrupted. "Timeyuan. Tibay. That should cover it." I stared at them, mouth open. "You're asking me for $7,000 right now, At this party, it's your sister's anniversary. Linda snap. We've already put deposit down. The least you can do is help make it memorable. I wasn't even told about this. My voice started rising. There's always something with you. Irina. Dad barked. You're being selfish. Mom added, this isn't even about money. It's about supporting family. I slowly shook my head, not believing what was happening. Support, you've ignored me since I walked in here. You've ignored me my whole life. Her eyes narrowed. Watch your tone. I'm not giving you that money. I said firmly, not today. Not ever. Dad's fist slammed the table edge. I flinched. Then why the hell did you even come? My heart started pounding. I instinctively touched my stomach. The baby jerked, reacting to my stress, because I thought, maybe you'd treat me like a daughter. I whispered. Mom snorted. You've embarrassed us enough. Waddling around here making scenes. I'm not making scenes. I hissed. I'm carrying your granddaughter. By now, guests at nearby tables were starting to stare. Then Lisa appeared, gliding over in her sparkling dress with a smug expression. What's the problem now? She asked irritably. Can't you just not ruin this for once? My mouth went dry. Sorry, everything's always about you. If you can't contribute anything useful, maybe you should just leave. She spat. I stood up slowly, trying to keep my balance. I wasn't going to take this abuse. But she cut me off, stepping forward and pointing a perfectly manicured finger at my belly. From day one, you've used that bump for attention. Nobody cares. And then she shoved me. Not hard, but enough. My balance shifted. I grabbed the table edge, trying to stay upright. Dad waved his hand dismissively. Leave her alone. She made her choice. Mom turned away without a word. In that moment, I finally understood. They didn't just want me quiet, they wanted me gone. I stood there shaking, arms around my belly. My pulse thundered in my ears. The baby kicked again. Hard, as if she too sensed danger. The world narrowed around me. Laughter and clinking glasses faded into background noise. I was alone, abandoned by people related to me only by blood. The attack Anton returned with water and fruit. Seeing my face, his smile vanished. Ira. What happened? I forced a weak smile, blinking back tears. Just family being family. He didn't believe me but didn't press. I need to step out. Take a work call before the ceremony starts. Wave if you need anything. I nodded. He kissed my forehead and walked away. Then something happened that changed everything. This time I didn't even hear the heels. Mom came at me like a fury, face twisted with rage, clutch in one hand, barely contained hatred in the other. How dare you? She hissed, stopping inches away. How dare you humiliate me in front of everyone? I blinked. I didn't say anything to anyone. You said no to us. She snapped. Now everyone's whispering. I looked around. Nobody was whispering. Nobody was even looking. But that didn't matter to her. She wasn't reacting to reality. She was reacting to losing control. You've always been like this. She continued. Ungrateful. Always playing victim. I'm not playing victim, I said quietly, and I won't give you money that's meant for our home. She clenched her jaw. It's just a house. Irina. It's my daughter's future. I replied evenly. She deserves stability. Mom's face twisted beyond recognition. If you really cared about that child, you'd teach her about loyalty, about sacrifice. I stepped back, ending this conversation. I'm done. Mom. But as I turned to leave, Lisa approached again. What now? She scoffed. Another excuse, Lisa. Movie aside, I said firmly, but she didn't move. She stepped closer, smirking with contempt. You've been milking this pregnancy since day one. Nobody cares. You're just looking for attention. And with that, she shoved me again. Harder this time. I staggered. My heels slipped on the stone tiles. I gasped. Arms windmilling, trying to keep balance. But before I could recover, Mom rushed forward without hesitation. Someone screamed nearby, but I barely heard it. She pushed me square in the chest. Eyes cold, lips pressed thin. I lost my balance completely. My foot slipped, center of gravity gone, falling backward at terrifying speed. Then, cold. Impact. Water. I fell into the hotel's decorative fountain. Fully dressed. 8 months pregnant. Unable to breathe. For a second, I sank underwater. Weightless. Helpless. The dress floated around me like a shroud. Panic exploded in my chest. I thrashed, trying to grab something, but pain shot through my belly and back. I can't be in water. I can't fall. I can't drown. Rescue and birth chaos above the surface. Screams. Shouts. Splashing. Then strong arms grabbed me. Anton dove in, fully clothed, pulling me to the fountain's edge. Irina. Talk to me, he shouted. Breathless and soaked, I was choking on air, trying to speak. And then it happened. My water broke. Warm liquid rushed down my legs. Oh God, Anton whispered. She's in labor. My body shook. Dress clinging to my skin. Stomach cramping with sharp, frequent contractions. Anton grabbed his phone with trembling hands. Dialing 911. My wife is 8 months pregnant, he shouted. She was pushed into a fountain. Her water broke. We need an ambulance. He turned to the crowd. Someone call the police, too. My wife was assaulted. Justice came quickly this time. The scene turned to chaos. Guests who'd been laughing and sipping champagne moments before froze in shock. Some screamed. Others frantically pulled out phones. Anton helt beside me, wet and shaking. One hand supported my head while he pressed napkins from a nearby table against my belly. My body convulsed with contractions. The pain was physical betrayal, pulsing through my veins. You're going to be okay, he whispered. You're strong. You can do this. Then a calm, commanding voice cut through the crowd. Everyone step back. We need space. A police sergeant appeared, tall, composed, with 2 officers and paramedics. He surveyed the scene, stopping at me, wet, pregnant, sobbing, barely breathing. Who did this? He asked loudly. Anton pointed straight at my mother. Her mother-in-law pushed my wife into the fountain. She's in premature labor, 8 months pregnant. Mom opened her mouth, but the sergeant raised his hand. You'll speak when asked. The paramedics worked quickly. One checked my vitals. Another monitored the baby's heartbeat. Emergency transport needed. One said, contractions are frequent, but Sergeant Martinez wasn't finished. We have witnesses, he said, turning to guests. Several people immediately stepped forward. Then a hotel employee ran up. There's security footage. She blurted breathlessly. Everything's recorded. The whole terrace is under surveillance. Excellent, Martinez said, taking out his notebook. We're securing that footage immediately. Mom backed away. It was an accident. She slipped. But guests were no longer silent. Lies, someone shouted. I saw you push her. Lisa pushed first. Another voice added. You all participated. Sergeant Martinez's expression hardened as he turned to Mom, Dad, and Lisa. You 3 are under arrest. Assault. Endangering an unborn child. Battery in a public place. Are you insane? Dad exploded. We're her family. The sergeant cut him off coldly. You're treating her like an enemy. Handcuffs snapped one after another. Mom was led away. Lisa burst into tears. Dad tried to argue. Nobody listened. Anton stayed beside me as they lifted me onto the stretcher. I gripped his hand, barely able to speak. Don't leave me. Never, he said, climbing into the ambulance. As sirens wailed and red and blue lights painted the marble tiles, I saw them, my parents and sister, handcuffed, being led to squad cars. No smug smiles, no false perfection. The crowd that had admired them now watched in disgust. I lay in that ambulance, wet, scared, in pain, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone. Justice was coming, and so was my daughter. The hospital. The ambulance raced through the Portland night. Siren cutting through silence. Lights flashing, warnings that something urgent was happening. I lay on the gurney, soaking wet, covered with a thin blanket. My belly clenched every few minutes, sharp. Pulsing contractions, stealing my breath. The paramedic adjusted sensors beside me, speaking calmly into his radio. 36 weeks. Premature labor following trauma. Fetal heart rate normal. ETA, 7 minutes. Alert the delivery team. Anton sat nearby. Wet shirt clinging to his body. Hair dripping. His hands holding mine were shaking. "You're doing great," he whispered. Though I was silent, his voice cracked, but his gaze stayed firm, focused only on me. "Everything will be okay. She'll be okay." I tried to nod, but my body seemed torn between panic and pain. I wasn't ready. Not like this. Not after this. But there was no turning back. Contractions were getting closer. Minutes later, ambulance doors swung open. I was wheeled into bright corridors of Oregon Health and Science University Hospital. Nurses in scrubs shouted instructions. Checking readings. Blood pressures rising. "Get the OB here." Get her dry and on monitors. Quickly. Then I heard the voice I needed most, Dr. Sarah Chen, my obstetrician. Calm, confident, familiar. "Irina, you're safe now," she said, placing a gloved hand on mine. 36 weeks is early, but baby's heartbeat is strong. We'll take good care of you both. I blinked through spreading light. "She's okay, she's strong." "Doctor." Chen nodded. Just like her mother, Anton kissed my forehead, whispering, "I'm here the whole time." Time blurred after that, no room for thoughts. Only breathing and pain. Contractions tore through me. More frequent, more intense. Nurses helped me change positions, taught me breathing techniques, supported me when I couldn't do it myself. I cried with each wave, feeling my body overwhelmed, but Anton never let go of my hand. "You've survived the worst part," he said. "This is where you win." I don't know how many hours passed. 2, maybe 3. Finally, I heard Dr. Chen's voice. "Now push harder." I can see her head. "Irina, just a few more pushes. You've got this." The pressure became unbearable. My body shook from exhaustion. I cried, screamed, prayed, all at once. Then I heard crying. Beautiful, piercing newborn cries, not weak or uncertain, but strong, demanding. My living daughter, born at exactly 2:04 a.m., 6 pound trisounce, dark hair and the softest, most perfect skin I'd ever touched. They placed her on my chest and I broke down sobbing. My arms instinctively wrapped around her. "Hello, baby," I whispered. "We made it." Anton leaned over us, his face wet with tears. "She's perfect. You're both perfect." I held her tight, kissing her tiny forehead. My body ached. My heart raced. But for the first time in my life, I felt complete. I had brought life into this world, not just despite the trauma, but through it, and on my own terms, recovery and justice. For 4 days in the hospital, doctors monitored me for concussion, ran tests, checked for complications from the fall and emergency delivery. Every nurse who entered called me Mama, brought warm blankets, treated me like someone important. Anton didn't leave, sleeping in the chair beside us. Our daughter curled on his chest as if she'd always belonged there. Looking at them in those quiet moments, I knew for certain those who tried to break me hadn't won. I was still here, and now I had someone worth fighting for, someone who would never have to beg for love like I once did. 2 days after discharge, we sat in a legal consultation office in downtown Portland. David Rodriguez, our attorney, had a modern office that radiated the confidence only law can provide. I felt tired, still recovering, but I knew why I was there. Not just for myself, but for my daughter, for the version of myself that had been silent too long. David didn't waste time. His laptop was open, folders spread out. "I've reviewed the security footage," he said, turning the screen toward us. For a moment, I watched my mother's hand on my chest. The push into the fountain, Dad turning away, Lisa clapping as if it were entertainment. Then Anton pulling me out, wet, in labor, in agony. Several guests sent this footage to police. David continued, plus full hotel security recordings. We have witness statements, medical records. This case is ironclad. Anton's jaw clenched. I stayed calm. I didn't need sympathy. I needed action. "I want to sue," I said. All of them. David nodded. Your case falls under aggravated assault with endangerment to life. Their actions threatened both you and your unborn child. Plus batterie. Creating danger for a pregnant woman. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Public humiliation. And Lisa for conspiracy and accessory charges. She created the situation that led to injury. Good. I said firmly. Money isn't the point. Accountability is... David looked me in the eyes. You'll get both. But be prepared. They'll cry. Dodge. Play the victim. They'll use the family car. Say it was a misunderstanding. Then I'll face them in court. I replied, holding medical records in one hand, my baby in the other. The trial. The hearing began 3 weeks later. The courtroom was stern, formal, tense. My family sat at the defendant's table trying to look harmless in muted colors. Mom favoritism pearls. Dad maintained his usual rigid expression. Lisa stared at her hands. Suddenly quiet. Their lawyer painted a picture of family misunderstanding, stress, emotional breakdown at a delicate event. They called me unstable, said pregnancy made me irrational, claimed I slipped. But the video played over and over. The push, the impact, guests' reactions, staff screaming. Then witnesses testified. One by one, they stood up. I saw her being pushed. She begged them to stop. They mocked her, applauded when she fell. Lisa's husband, Mark, didn't appear in court. He'd already filed for divorce. Sending a written statement, I cannot remain married to someone who laughed when her pregnant sister nearly drowned. Lisa cried when this was read. I felt nothing. When my turn came to speak, I didn't cry. I stood straight. Told the court how I'd been treated my entire life, called selfish for refusing to give up money for the home my husband and I had bought. Ignored. Ridiculed. Ultimately attacked in front of hundreds of people. I'm not just a victim of one evening, I said calmly. I'm the result of decades of being treated like nobody. Silence filled the courtroom. When the judge spoke, her words rang clear and heavy. The court finds Linda Peterson, Oliver Peterson, and Lisa Martinez guilty on all counts. Mom was sentenced to 7 years in state prison without possibility of parole. Dad got 5 years for conspiracy and criminal threats. Lisa got 4 years for incitement, public cruelty, and perjury. I didn't smile or celebrate. I just squeezed Anton's hand tighter as he squeezed mine. For the first time in my life, I exhaled as if weight had lifted from my chest. Justice was no longer abstract. It had a name, a sentence, a court seal, and I lived to see it. New beginning. A year has passed, a full rotation around the sun. 12 months since that night when I lay on cold stone, wet, humiliated, writhing in pain while my family turned away. But this day didn't begin with tears or fear. It began with warmth. I stood on the deck of our new house, coffee mug in hand, watching morning fog curl between Douglas firs. Our daughter, our miracle, played on a blanket in the living room, clapping and babbling while sunlight poured through windows. We named her Grace, bringing light and joy. And she was exactly that, the peace we never knew we needed. The beginning of everything good. After the trial, Anton and I decided not to return to the condo where pain lived. Instead, we moved to a house in the Cascade foothills, wooden home with creaky floors, wildflowers along the fence, and a garden where we dig on Sundays. Not huge or luxurious, but our. No shadows, no silence, no expectations, just space to breathe, heal, start over. Anton adjusted his schedule to work from home more. I slowly returned to event planning, working with clients who respected me, never judging me for the past or trying to use me. In this quiet, we created new traditions: homemade pizza Fridays, trips to local parks Saturdays, pancake breakfast Sundays, and we never skimped on maple syrup. There were difficult nights when I still heard my mother's voice, accusing, rejecting, moments when I woke from nightmares about falling, drowning, being pushed, but Anton held me, and Grace's tiny feet padded into our bedroom, and everything sharp became soft again. I didn't just survive my family's betrayal, I rewrote my definition of family. I chose kindness, boundaries, peace. On Grace's first birthday, We did something simple and honest. We built a small fire in our backyard after sunset. Anton tended it while Grace toddled around in teddy bear pajamas, waving a flashlight like a magic wand. We roasted marshmallows, wrapped ourselves in blankets, let the gentle night embrace us. I sipped coffee, leaned back in my chair, looked at the star-filled sky above our mountain home, quietly, more to myself than anyone else. I said, "They broke me once, but I built something stronger from the pieces." Anton turned and smiled. "You didn't just build it, you protected it, gave it life." I looked at our daughter giggling by the flickering flames and nodded. "This is our new beginning. No more hiding, no more begging to be seen. I am no longer the forgotten daughter. I am Irina, the woman who stood up, spoke truth, and bought a home where love is unconditional and peace isn't purchased with silence." My story didn't end in betrayal. It began with rebirth. And this time, I was the author. Story 2. She was sitting at the kitchen table, chopping vegetables for dinner, when her husband walked into the room, seemingly unaware of her presence. His stride was confident, his every movement tinged with self-satisfaction. She felt a slight tension as he paused at the doorway, folded his arms across his chest, and spoke words that pierced her heart like an icy knife. "I'll handle the money. My mother will raise our children, and you just work." The knife almost slipped from her fingers, and the lump in her throat made breathing difficult. It seemed like the world around her froze for a moment, and only the beating of her heart broke the silence. She tried to collect her thoughts, but her husband's words repeated in her head over and over, like a looped recording of just work. My mother to raise, manage money. Every element of this statement was a blow of work. It means your opinion does not matter. My mother raises children. It means your mothering skills and care are not needed. And managing money means that the financial independence for which she fought for so many years was completely destroyed. She felt a storm of emotions rising in her chest. Anger, hurt, confusion, and betrayal, all tangled in one hot ball. She tried to ask calmly, hoping to hear at least some explanation. "Why do you say that? What does this mean for us?" He leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "You're just right. You work, earn money, and mom will help with the kids." It all made sense, logical for him, but completely unacceptable for her. The logic that completely ignored her opinion, her feelings, and her life seemed absurd and cruel. She sat in silence for several minutes, trying to stop her hands from shaking and her heart from trembling. The pictures of the future they had built together suddenly crumbled like a house of cards. She remembered conversations about shared dreams, about traveling, about family comfort, about raising children together. All of this turned out to be an illusion, because in reality her role was limited to work and supporting the family, and her husband had completely given over control over the children and money to his mother. She began to search her memory for moments when he showed care, concern, understanding, but now they seemed petty, insignificant, a shadow of what she expected from a partner. Her inner voice screamed, "You should not be silent. You have the right to an opinion, to participation, to respect." But outwardly she remained calm, trying not to show the tears that were welling up in her eyes. While her husband sat across from her, checking his phone, she noticed how he carelessly scrolled through messages, not paying the slightest attention to her presence. His indifference cut deeper than any words. She realized that if she did not show strength now, if she did not show that she did not agree to be a toy in their family game, everything would change only in his favor. She couldn't afford to be the kind of person whose feelings and decisions didn't matter. They didn't talk anymore that night. Her husband would occasionally make comments like, "Don't worry. It's all for the best for the family." But there was no support, no sign of respect. She sat in the room, listening to her own breathing, and gradually realized that the silence had become her ally. She knew it was time to act. Gather information. Consider her options. Look for a way that would allow her to preserve herself, her rights, and her independence. The night had been hard. She lay in bed, unable to sleep, replaying her husband's words, his manner of speaking, his indifference in her head. She felt determination growing inside her. These are not just words, but a signal that she can no longer remain on the sidelines. If she remains silent, her life will not belong to her, but to her husband and his mother, and then she will lose not only her money and freedom, but also herself. When the first rays of sun penetrated the curtains, she already knew that everything would change. This day became a turning point. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she made a firm decision not to allow anyone to control her life, her children, and her work any longer. She was ready to fight, to seek ways and means to regain control of her destiny. Her husband and his mother received the first signal. She will not remain silent. She will not submit, and she will never allow herself to be controlled. Inside the woman, despite her anxiety and fatigue, a new strength was being born. A strength that gradually turned into determination, confidence, and readiness for action. This day was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, where she would again become the master of her own destiny. The whole next day passed as if in a fog. She tried to concentrate on work, on the tasks that were supposed to be important, but her thoughts constantly returned to her husband's words, "I will manage the money. My mother will raise our children. And you just work." This phrase sounded in her head like an obsessive melody, not giving her a moment of peace. Every time she closed her eyes, a picture appeared before her eyes. He, confident in himself, with a smug smile, and next to his mother, as if ready to take control of everything that belonged to her and her children. She went outside during her lunch break, hoping that the fresh air would help clear her mind. People around her were hurrying, laughing, talking on the phone, and it seemed to her that the whole world had suddenly become alien. She felt anxiety growing inside. Anxiety for the future, for her children, for her rights. She understood that if she did nothing, her life would gradually turn into endless submission to someone else's will, and her desires and dreams would go unnoticed. When she returned home, her husband was already home. He was casually looking at the bills, making some lists of expenses and throwing out remarks from time to time. "Mom will sort this out. You work. Don't worry about it." Each of his words sounded like a hammer blow to her inner peace. She understood that he considered her role minimal, secondary, and his decisions not final. That evening, after dinner, she decided to speak. She sat down opposite him, took a deep breath and said, "Do you realize that this is not normal? My work is my life, my efforts, my money, and you want to completely ignore my opinion and give everything to your mother." He looked up, slightly surprised, as if hearing this for the first time, and said, "It's for the family. Mom will help with the children. I will distribute the money." What is there to understand? She felt everything inside her shrink. Her heart beat faster, and her breathing cleared. Each of his words sounded like a sentence, like confirmation that her opinion meant nothing to him. She understood that if she remained silent now, tomorrow would be even worse. Material power and the upbringing of children would completely leave her hands. She couldn't sleep that night. Lying in the dark, she mentally went over options, conversations, compromises, legal measures. She knew that there was a long way to go, that she would have to seek support, perhaps seek out specialists to protect herself and her children. But the thought of remaining in submission was unbearable. She felt her determination to no longer let someone else's opinion, someone else's mother and husband dictate her life. The next day, she went back to work, but with a different mindset. She began writing down everything that happened at home: dates, conversations, remarks, details. This became her preparation for future actions, for talking to a lawyer, for planning the steps that would help her regain control of her life. Her thoughts were clear. She is not going to back down. She will not allow herself to be manipulated. In the evening, when her husband returned, she raised the topic again. "We need to discuss how our responsibilities and finances are divided. I can't just work and remain silent while your mother controls our lives." Her husband tried to justify himself again, talking about family, about help, about how this is best for everyone. But now she listened to him calmly, with inner firmness. She knew that a compromise was possible, but not at the cost of her freedom and right to an opinion. At that moment, something inside her finally changed. Volga gradually turned into strength. She understood that, despite the fear and uncertainty, She would no longer live by someone else's rules. She was ready to fight for herself, for her rights, for her children, and for a future that she would determine, not her husband or his mother. That evening, closing her eyes, she felt confident for the first time. Her husband's words no longer sounded like a sentence, but like a signal that it was time to act. And she was ready. Ready for any difficulties, for any conversation, for any steps to get her life back and the right to be heard. The morning began anxiously. The woman woke up with a feeling of heaviness in her chest, as if the night had left behind. It was not only fatigue that was left behind, but also a dark trace of helplessness. Her husband's words sounded in her head over and over again. I will manage the money. My mother will raise our children. And you just work? It seemed that this order was stuck in every corner of her consciousness, poisoning her thoughts and emotions. She knew that if she didn't show determination, her life would be completely under the control of strangers, and her own opinions and rights would be insignificant. Pulling herself together, she went to the kitchen and poured herself a cup of strong coffee. The bitter taste awakened her senses, made her realize that she could no longer remain on the sidelines. Each sip was a reminder that it was time to act. She knew that talking to her husband would not help anymore, because he had already made his decision, and his mother was ready to support him at any cost. This union seemed impenetrable, but an inner voice whispered, "You are stronger than you think." When her husband came down to the kitchen, she was ready. He looked self-assured as usual, but today there was no fear in her eyes. She sat down opposite him, put her hands on the table and began to speak. I want to understand one thing. Why do you think that my role is limited to work only, and your mother can be trusted to raise our children? The husband, as if not expecting such a question, raised an eyebrow and said, but that is logical. I manage the money. Mom helps with the kid. And you work. It's that simple. She felt a fire blazing inside her. The simple word logical seemed like a mockery of her rights and feelings. She took a deep breath, trying to control her emotions, and said firmly, nothing about this is logical. It's wrong. I don't agree to let anyone else decide how my family lives except me. Her husband leaned back in his chair, slightly irritated, but without fear or regret. Well, it's for your own good. You work, so your role is clear. The words touched her very heart, but at the same time awakened her determination. She realized that there was no retreat. If she remained silent, tomorrow would be even worse. Financial control, raising children, everything would be out of her hand, and her voice would forever be a quiet whisper among other people's decisions. She knew that in order to preserve herself and her right to an opinion, she had to act decisively and competently. During the day, she began to prepare, began to write down all the details, dates, remarks and events related to the management of money and the intervention of her mother-in-law. Every document, every entry became her shield and weapon. She understood that this was not just a fight for money or control. This was a fight for her dignity, for the right to be heard, for the right to influence the lives of her children. In the evening, her husband tried to get them to talk again. Her words, but now his, were met only with firmness and silent resistance. She made it clear that compromise was possible, but not at the cost of her freedom, rights, and respect. His attempts to manipulate, justifying his concerns for his family, were shattered by her inner resolve. For the first time, she felt that she was not afraid of him, that she would not allow him to control her and her decisions. The night brought with it a quiet but confident strength. There was still a slight anxiety, but a sense of inner power was growing alongside it. She knew the road would be long and difficult, that she would have to fight her husband and his mother, but fear no longer controlled her. Every decision, every step would be aimed at regaining control over her life, protecting her children and asserting her rights. And in this new state, in this feeling of strength and clarity, for the first time in a long time, she felt that she was able to change the situation. Pain, disappointment, and resentment gradually transformed into a determination to act, into the certainty that her life belonged only to her and that no one had the right to dispose of her or her children. That evening was a turning point, the beginning of a path to independence, to inner freedom, to a future she would build herself. Several days passed after that tense conversation. and her resolve gradually grew stronger. Every day, watching her husband calmly manage her money and hand over the upbringing of the children to his mother, she understood one thing: she could no longer remain on the sideline. Her husband's words echoed in her head over and over again, but now they no longer caused fear. On the contrary, they awakened her inner strength, pushing her to action. She began to record everything: financial transactions, her husband's and his mother's remarks, details of their interference in family life. Keeping such records became not only a preparation for possible legal action, but also a tool for regaining control over her life. Each line of the diary strengthened the confidence that she was not alone, that her voice mattered, and that she could protect herself and her children. In the evenings, she discussed possible courses of action with a lawyer. It gave her a sense of protection and understanding. She could act without giving in to emotions. But competently and consistently, she understood that the fight would be difficult, that she would have to confront her husband and his mother. But now, fear gave way to determination. The atmosphere in the house remained tense. Her husband tried to behave as usual, but she met his words with a firm position. There was no more panic or tears. There were only calm ones. But I don't agree with the firm answers. This is our common life. Hey, children deserve the attention of both parents. Each such conversation was a step towards regaining control over one's own life and self-confidence. The inner feeling of strength gradually grew into a clear understanding of the future. She made plans, thought about financial independence, about a home where her opinion would matter, about the possibility of raising children on her own. Each day brought her closer to freedom, to creating a life where no one could control her destiny. The night brought reflection. But now, without anxiety, she felt strength in every movement. In every breath, the husband and his mother received the first signal: she will no longer remain silent, will not obey, and will not allow her life to be controlled. This stage became the beginning of a new chapter, where she will determine her own future, protect herself and her children, and build her life by her own rules.